Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Anna. I'm part of the GCC Regulatory Affairs Summit team. And ever since the momentum we built during our 2026 edition, I can confidently say that the conversations have kept flowing and part of the ongoing dialogue. I'm thrilled to introduce our participants and today's exciting session. We'll be talking about regulatory intelligence, AI, and data-connected systems and how they're changing regulatory decision-making. Today's discussion is going to dive into where AI is already creating real value in regulatory operations, and just as importantly, where it can fail so we can govern it responsibly. To start things off, we'll start with an interactive presentation which sets the global NGCC landscape, which will be led by Mr. Aditya Tallapragada. Aditya is the president of AKT Health, and he brings more than 19 years of global life sciences and health tech experience, spanning the regulatory affairs, market access, and digital health innovation across Japan, India, the UAE, and the US. And he also holds a patent for healthcare information management systems. With this experience in regulatory and the technological field, he will lead the discussion on AI in regulatory decision-making. This presentation will also open an interactive discussion into the risks, safeguards, and frameworks regulatory teams need to use AI with confidence. To chime in on some of these key points, we are thrilled to have Dr. Neveen Kamel join us today. She currently heads regulatory affairs at Merck for North Africa, Egypt, and French-speaking Africa, and serves as their scientific office manager. Dr. Neveen is a fierce advocate for regulatory policy in these regions and brings over 25 years of industry experience, 20 of which were specifically in regulatory affairs, having worked across several multinationals in roles that spanned commercial, quality, pharmacovigilance, market access, and pricing. And alongside Dr. Neveen, we also have two regulatory experts who will share their invaluable inputs. Joining us, we also have Dr. Abdullah Alshemas, who is the regulatory affairs head for Saudi Arabia at Merck Group. With over 13 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry, his expertise include regulatory strategy, product registration, lifecycle management, regulatory intelligence, and enabling market access for innovative medicines in Saudi. And lastly, but definitely not least, our other expert joining is Dr. Rasha Al-Masri, Merck's head of regulatory affairs for the Gulf. With her 20 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry, her leadership has played a strategic role in ensuring compliance and fast access to medication across the region. Her expertise then span multiple functions, having started in commercial before transitioning into regulatory affairs. Given our greatness and joining of the Merck's team, we would like to make a disclaimer that they are sharing their own experiences as local country regulatory affairs representatives and not the GRA worldwide. Before I hand things over, I want to bring one last element to our attendees today, and that we have time for answering our audience's question at the end of today's webinar. We want to keep this as an engaging and interactive knowledge sharing experience. So everyone that has joined us today, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat box as we go, and we will try our best to bring them up to our experts at the end of the discussion. With that, thank you so much to all our speakers that have joined and everyone in the audiences. And I welcome Aditya to start our discussion.
Thank you, Anna. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. And good afternoon, Dr. Neveen. Good afternoon, Dr. Abdullah, and good afternoon, Dr. Rasha. It will be a great pleasure actually discussing about this topic. I've been looking forward to have a very deeper dive on each and every topic today. So let me start with what we're going to discuss. Basically, I just wanted to start with how is AI changing and how is the connected data changing, and then we will start with three core pillars of this entire discussion, I think, which should mainly revolve around responsible AI, practical applications in AI, and the risks, and then how we build the future of AI. So let me quickly jump into the pretext of this entire discussion, where I would want to start with what the global regulatory bodies are doing right now. And then we see that FDA, Jan 2025, they've already started the AI draft guidance, the risk-based credibility. EMA, the Europe is already creating a long-term plan on how responsibly they would be using AI in their actually operations. And then we have MHRA, and then FDA, PMDA. Almost every regulatory body you see have set out certain guidelines, certain rules, certain long-term plans. And then uh, we just wanted to discuss how GCC is actually catching up with that speed. Of course, Dr. Neveen would actually give us a more on a global and a general perspective from her side, but we would also have a deeper insights from the GCC, from both Dr. Abdullah and Dr. Rasha, who has first-hand experience and who have been in that industry, understanding and trying to implement on their day-to-day activities as well. So if you look at GCC, because GCC didn't start from the paper side, they've actually started with a lot of data background, and especially I'm talking about Saudi Arabia, UAE. They already started with a lot of data from the background, and then now they are building, you know, more regulatory authorities, especially with the Saudi Arabia coming up with a new AI laboratory called SAIL, which is actually kind of they've started this year, and then I think it's catching up with a very strong speed with a lot of data, which data portals which are being introduced by the government itself. So I will move on to my next slide, where we would discuss on how these authorities are actually behaving these days. Basically, regulatory authorities also started using AI to some extent based on the data they have. At the same time, they also have to control the AI. So how does this perception change? Because using AI and also controlling the AI is one of the difficult challenge points to be in. What kind of data points that they would consider, what are the practical applications initially they would be coming up with, and then they would be implementing it, what are the risks that they would be willing to assume, and then how do they involve all these different data sets, that how much trust you could build into the system is what we would be discussing going forward. Here, today's main discussion points, as I've already told you, we would discuss onto three major areas, which is the first pillar, how we actually, what are the practical applications of AI? Where do we deploy the AI first? Whether it's the pharmacovigilance, whether it's the regulatory intelligence, or how do you bring human into the loop? Who's responsible to actually control that application, and who is actually governing those applications which are using this data? And then finally, we would actually build a data foundation where we actually, as a team, both from be it from the industry, be it from the regulatory bodies, be it from the solution providers, how we team up and actually lay out these foundations to actually have a greater, a brighter future for the AI. So, and then we will now start our discussion around these three areas which I was talking about, and then we will actually start talking with our regulatory experts and then with their industry knowledge to see how and where we could actually start up with our AI creating value in these regulatory applications. So from my perspective, of course, regulatory intelligence has been one of the key areas in which AI has been used. In the past, we used to wait for a lot of time to actually understand what the regulatory bodies are doing, what are the changes that are happening in the regulatory intelligence space. But right now, everything, it's onto your dashboards. You quickly implement, you change your documentation. Dossier preparations have become very faster because you understand what are the changes happening. You just run a small analysis, and then you have the complete gaps from different jurisdictions. Of course, pharmacovigilance, recently I was working or speaking to one of the clients who wanted to not just look into the Saudi Arabia region, but he wanted to look at every regulatory body, what they are doing in the same. So I think the industry is changing rapidly. There are multiple applications, I'm sure. Dr. Naveen, I think I would first like to start with you. A very, I'm sure you have been working on a lot of applications, and then you come across some various tools every day, and then so can you give us some practical examples of AI? Where you are applying today, or could you really see any benefits there, or what should the teams watch out for in general?
Thank you very much, Mr. Aditya, for your introduction and your presentation to start this exciting discussion. I think everybody is excited to use the different tools, and every organization, this company already started piloting lots of applications. Let's agree on a statement before we start that, because there is a famous question which we usually hear from the regulatory affairs people: is there any risk that AI will replace the regulatory professional or not? So actually, I would take this as a quick answer that the biggest actually risk is the overtrust. So the most important thing, or the effective use of any AI application, that the person who is using this AI, he needs to understand the limit of the AI tool and how he can use its capabilities. This is the first guiding information before we go and use any application. Regarding the applications, it's very useful. Definitely, it is a force multiplier. It accelerates the work. So one of the applications I can share with you also, which we're already working with, is the promotional material review. So there are lots of benefits in this application where definitely, we have medical and regulatory review. So we consider the application as a pre-screening to check the compliance of this promotional material. So sometimes this tool can flag off-label indication, for example, or any unsupported claim. They also matches the cited reference, for example. And one of the important things, which also the authority revised, that they compare this promotional material against the approved label. But definitely, we need to have a reconsideration or a watch out. This AI tool, again, it is a pre-screening. It's not a substitute for a formal review process according to the SOP of the organization. So again, personal experts should validate and verify and do the final review. So this is one of the most really application which we pilot and we use at the Gen AI for this promotional material. But not only this, definitely we started other applications like this regulatory intelligence. Now there are tools which really continuous monitoring all the publications from all the websites of health authority, as well as the dossier preparation and the life cycle management process. So I would invite also Dr. Abdullah for the discussion to tell us or to describe how does AI support in the dossier preparation or the CTD gap analysis, and what is the watch outs which the team needs to take care while using these tools.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Neveen. Actually, this is a great question. So basically, the AI can scan a dossier and map missing sections as if checklists from the guidelines. Of course, against the authority requirements, immediately in hours, not in weeks. This will reduce the time needed for the pre-submission readiness checks across multiple markets. Also, it can flag gaps in Module 1 to Module 5 based on the applicable regulatory framework. And here, the key watch out is that AI may reference a superseded GCC guidelines and circulars as its basis, and not using the most updated guidelines. Always, we need to validate the AI gap analysis findings against the most current officially published guidance. This output as a starting point, the RA expert must confirm every identified gap independently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdullah. The second application, Dr. Aditya, as presented in the slide, is the regulatory operations. So really, we have lots of applications. I mean, starting from the variation impact assessment. So, whenever we have any variation, we have to do lots of assessments and even the renewal calendar or tracking. And it is also recently used in the drafting of the queries from any health authority. But actually, I need to ask Dr. Rasha, can we really use the AI as the sole tool for drafting the responses for health authority? And what is the consideration to take care of?
Thank you, Neveen. Such a good question, actually, going to all our minds. Actually, AI can generate a structured first draft based on the deficiency question and text and the dossier content. This, of course, saves a huge time and ensure a logical, formatted starting point for the responses document. However, health authorities' inquiries often carry procedural and country-specific or rationale text that the AI cannot interpret. Here comes the thing that we have to say, the expertise comes here from the human. So AI summarizes the text. It cannot understand what the authority is truly asking between lines. So every health authority response requires senior regulatory expert review for us to do the legal alignment as well and strategic ownership. So AI drafts the word, but the expert on the strategy, the tone, the regulatory relationship.
So thank you very much, Rasha. And this is just examples for the applications, but definitely there are lots of tools.
Of course.
Yes, in clinical trials and many other topics for the AI tools. So back to you, Mr. Aditya, to take us through the journey.
Thank you very much. I think it's quite interesting to understand from a pre-screening tool till the drafting tool. There's so many ways in which these practical applications can be implemented. And one important part all three of you have been saying is that the human in the loop part, which is definitely there. Only I think we are also talking about a lot of products coming into the market. There is a lot of regulatory gaps as well from the regulatory bodies, to time to market these products into the time to actually ship this product into the market is also getting delayed. I'm sure regulatory bodies would consider this kind of a hybrid approach where you have AI doing most of the work in terms of drafting, because even in the past we had templates. We used to use templates. We never generated everything from scratch, but then now with AI it becomes more easier. And now that where we are coming up is how responsible are we in actually taking up that position. They are very intelligent. Of course, they're not just dumb templates that we have to do. Their AI is quite intelligent. They sometimes gives us more than what we actually ask them. So that's one of the challenging part of most of the AI tools that we use, is it's too much noise around. And then of course having a human in the loop is definitely very important. And then also what we are looking at is you were talking about something very interesting. We have an SOP that a human has to be in between. So that's a very interesting concept of including that human in the loop in your SOPs, will your SOPs also include that, this is done by AI or something like that? Is also quite an interesting question that we would actually look into. But when this is, I think I would actually shift this question to Dr. Abdullah, because he was trying to explain about the entire activity in that regulatory space. So when you use AI tools in day-to-day work, what are the risks that you usually see? So before I actually jump into your response, I would just give us a basic understanding of what we have been looking at. Of course, I was talking to you about the hallucination part that comes from the AI, which is the top of the mind. We understand, and every regulatory expert in the market who is there, he knows that whatever these AI tools are producing is not exactly what I need. And then, of course, there is also Dr. Rasha was telling that there is reading between the lines, which is very, very difficult, reading between the lines part. And then also there is definitely, we see a lot of regulatory products coming into the Japan market from US, and they are not truly translatable. It's not like you're translating an English document into a Japanese document and submitting it. It's completely different market. Even though it's people think that's a translation, we literally recreate everything from scratch if you have to submit in a different jurisdiction. I'm sure that's the case with the entire GCC as well. Although it's a single body, I assume there are these small nuances, or the human in the loop, the regulatory context, and of course the accountability part. So once again, Dr. Abdullah, I want you to tell what is your risk, what you see, how do you mitigate these risks in practice, and how do you actually uh, do this on a day-to-day basis? That's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Aditya. Indeed, this is very important question, especially as AI is becoming more common in regulatory affairs activities. So when we talk about using AI in regulatory affairs, there are 6 critical risk areas that we need to be aware of. These risks are well defined, and each one requires an active mitigation by the RA regulatory experts. So when we go to the first risk area as the guidance currency, so AI tools may have a knowledge cutoff, which means they may rely on outdated regulations, guidelines, or requirements. In regulatory affairs, this is a significant risk because regulatory guidance can change frequently. To mitigate this risk, we should ensure that AI is provided with the most recent guidance or current versions whenever applicable. However, even when updated information is provided, any AI-generated regulatory content must still be verified against the latest official health authority or regulatory source before it is used. And the second risk area is the jurisdictional nuance. This means country-specific or region-specific requirements as a general. Many AI models are trained mainly on EU and US regulatory frameworks. So EMA and FDA information may be more dominant in the AI outputs. As a result, AI may not fully capture the local health authority expectations or regional procedures, as well as the market-specific requirements. This is why the regulatory professional must always apply local knowledge and verify the country-specific context. When we go to the third area, or the third risk area, is the regulatory intent. AI can summarize the health authority feedback or deficiency letters, but it cannot reliably understand the true intent behind them. Understanding what the health authority is really asking for that requires experience, of course, and the context and the regulatory judgment. This remains the responsibility of the human RA experts. When we go to the fourth risk area is the hallucination, and as you mentioned, Mr. Aditya, this is very important. So the hallucinations happens when generative AI produce incorrect information, but presented as a confident fact. This may include fabricated guidelines, not existing circulars, wrong dosing figures, or false citation. In a regulatory dossier, even one fabricated reference can create a serious issue and may lead to questions, delays, or even rejected by the health authority. So the mitigation is clear here. Every AI-generated reference must be verified against the original official source. Of course, no AI output should be accepted as a factual without independent confirmation. The fifth risk area is the data privacy. So the confidential company information and the dossier content or patient-related data must never be entered into unapproved public AI tools. The data privacy and the information security requirements must always be followed using AI in regulatory work. Last but not least, the sixth risk area is the audit trail. So when AI is used as in activities that support regulatory submissions, it is must be always used, must be traceable, documented, and of course defensible. Of course, we need here to be able to explain what AI was used for, what input used provided, what output was generated, and how the output was reviewed, last but not least, and what final decision was made by the human RA experts. So, in a summary, AI can be very useful support tool in regulatory affairs, but it must always be used under human oversight. Of course, and always the final responsibility remains with the regulatory expert, not with the AI tool. And about the audit trail points, here I would like to ask Dr. Rasha. Dr. Rasha, what audit trail is required when AI is used in a regulatory submission?
Thank you, Dr. Abdullah. Very good question as well, because this is what we are doing now, and this is how we should think about it when we are doing it. So the health authorities are moving towards requiring disclosure when AI tool contribute to the regulatory submission. So organizations that build their audit trail need to be ready for meeting compliance parameter. The required 4 stages trial begins with, first of all, the AI prompt log. This should be having what was asked and to which tool. Number 2, raw AI output, let's consider it as version 0. And this version should be saved and unedited and clearly labeled not reviewed yet. So number 3 should be human review version, which is considered, let's consider it version 1. This with track changes, corrections, and source verification for the documents. Number 4, and the final version, let's consider it here for easiness, version 1.0. This should carry the approver signature, SOP references, and the AI disclosure statement. This is from our perspective and the best practice to use the audit trail in our regulatory life. And now I will take you again to Mr. Aditya to continue the exciting presentation until now. Please.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dr. Rasha.
I think this discussion can continue for hours and hours, and I'm sure I think we have so many topics to to actually cover, but because of the time constraint, we are actually kind of speeding up all our discussions. But it's a very I think we are getting to some point where we understand what are the applications. Now we see how to actually handle them. Recently, I will move to my next slide. Recently, sorry, we see that a lot of regulatory I think we had one area where jurisdictional nuances, which we Dr. Abdullah was saying that we need to have a data which is from that region, that gives you more credibility of that data and the trained data. Of course, this is where I think the connected regulatory operations would actually pitch in, basically, because of course, even though GCC, we are talking more about GCC, but GCC itself is like 6 countries now. And then of course, if you actually expand it to Middle East and Africa, it's a huge market itself. And then there are the connected regulatory operations itself are quite challenging. And then we are actually implementing a template of Europe and US into that, which is quite a difficult position to be in, as unless and until your the best audit practices follow. We do have in clinical research, we do have all these digital signatures, 21 CFR Part 11s and everything, but this has been running for 20-30 years. And now we have EU AI Act recently come in, which is just trying to say, oh, we need to have a watermark for every content generated, what's going in, what's going out. I think, but how do we make this future ready operations, especially in the regulatory space? Because ultimately, unless and until your product is not approved by a regulatory body, your product is not out into the market. How much ever good your research could be, lack of proper evidence, lack of the data that's regulatory body. We've been discussing today many times that reading in between the lines or the regulatory intent. This is where I think the connected regulatory operations would really come into the picture. And then, of course, obviously, the regulatory teams hugely depend on what is the safety data, what is the labeling data. There's so many other cross-functional collaborations that we need. And then, of course, are we ready with that document? And then how do we need to, and finally, I think this is quite important, which we also as a solution providers, is like, how do we develop the talent, and then how do we actually nurture those skills to understand the regulatory part, to understand the AI part as well right now. So I think I will once again circle back to Dr. Neveen. It's this is a very complex scenario to be in, but what does exactly a good practice? I mean, we have GCP for good clinical practice. Do we have a good AI practice or something like that? It's quite it's very good to have a good AI practice, especially in the regulatory space, or not just regulatory space, the entire clinical research or the entire pharmaceutical space. Good AI practice is what. And then how would someone start using this, especially if you are a regulatory person? And then how do we actually get there soon? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Aditya. Actually, I want to echo what you mentioned before I go to this framework or the best practice. I want to echo that a continuous conversation and communication and discussion is needed all the time between the regulators and the organization, while they are adding the governance and while they are adding, because everybody now is piloting. So if the regulators need to assess or need to pilot, they need to use the organization data to pilot. So it needs actually a continuous conversation ongoing, like this discussion and other forums, in order to reach the right and the best way how to use and how to have a special consideration. So I just wanted to echo what you mentioned. Turning to the other, your question about the good practice. So I would summarize this as a 3x3 framework. So if you have a team who will start working with the AI tool, we need to teach them and also to take this consideration about ourselves on 3 pillars. So, and every pillar will have we call it 3x3 framework. So the first one is before we use the AI, what we need to take care of. So before we use the AI, we need to confirm that the tool is approved and check our policy internally. What is the level of information we can use? We can use internal only information, confidential, or even secret. And this is usually written in the policy of the organization. This is the first thing before we use. The second thing before we use this AI tool, we need to check the knowledge cutoff date. And this is thing which I learned recently. You can directly ask the AI tool, what is your knowledge cutoff date? For example, I asked before entering and I found it's 2024. This is the last cutoff date. And that emphasizes what Dr. Abdullah mentioned, that you need to feed the latest guidelines because maybe he's not educated till up to date. So every tool has a different cutoff date. So this is before using, you need to know this. The last thing, before you use the AI, you need to describe who you are. What is your profile? I am assessor at health authority, or I am a regulatory affair expert at organization or at company. You need to describe very well your profile and the prompt. The prompt is very important. What is the question or what you really need to do? Do you need to do a gap analysis or you need to do a comparison or compliance check according to SOP? You can feed the SOP and then use the tool. So this is the first thing before using the AI. Okay, what I need to do during using the AI? During the AI, you need to tell your team and remind yourself all the time that you trust the output as a first draft only. So definitely it's only a first draft. Another thing, you need to document the tool name and the version and the date. The last thing which Dr. Abdullah mentioned about the hallucination. So sometimes the AI give you the page and the version and all this, and it's not correct. So you need to go. So this is what we say. Don't over trust. You need to go and check the primary source. Is it really page 9, version 7, or this is just a hallucination? Because the AI replies with a very confident way, page 6, version 7, but this does not exist sometimes. So number one, you need to feed the guidelines. Number two, you need to check against the primary thing. These are the three things you need to do during the AI. Okay, after using the AI tool, only we have also three things, which is very important. Apply your SOP and your complete approval review. You need to do the approval review. Maintain the audit trail, as Dr. Rasha mentioned, version 0, version 1, and then version 1.0, where you label these versions as human reviewed or raw output or whatever. The last thing, which is very important thing that you need after revising, you will find some errors in the AI. You need to do capture this error and do as a lesson learned and feed back the tool as a machine learning. So you should not track this section again because this is whatever. So you need to give feedback again so we benefit that the error will not be repeated. They are machine learning things. So that's the before, during, after. So it is 3x3 framework as a best practice. So the overarching principle, I would say, AI accelerate, but the human expert ensures it is right. Back to you, Mr. Aditya.
Thank you very much. I think we're almost quite at the end of our discussion. I actually wanted to discuss a lot more on each and every topics, but obviously I understand we are running out of time. Yeah, it was a great conversation. Right from the practical applications that we have seen, and then what could be challenges that we would come, and how do we build that future ready operations by using a combination of framework before, during, and after the document creation or usage of AI. I think it's very well laid out. Of course, I think there's a lot of work needs to be done, as in connecting the data behind how we feed these AI tools, how accurate they become. I think these days they are getting better in terms of citing the sources, but then I think there's still a lot of work needs to be done. I think one very important point is skill check of the AI is very, very important. Whether whatever models you use, I think skill check, starting with skill checks is very, very important before we actually even jump into what the AI knows. I think I would like to pass it on to Anna to see if we have any questions from the audience, so that we could take them and then conclude this.
Of course. We're still on schedule. We have 20 more minutes we can dedicate to the questions. So any of our participants that are with us, please feel free to use the Q&A segment for now to drop your questions. Our experts are willing and capable to answer to the best of their ability. If we drop down into the Q&A panel, we can see that some have already been coming in. I will just read out, and perhaps Aditya can decide to whom it may be best addressed. One question we have is, how can AI-based regulatory intelligence tools be appropriately leveraged for Class B and lower risk IVDs during the EU IVDR transition period, particularly where transitional provisions apply?
I am not sure if I think Dr. Neveen could actually look into that, because she is more.
Actually, this question is more into the medical devices, so it needs expertise from the medical devices, and it is during the EU transition period. So actually, our expertise is mainly for the products. So maybe we can rely this question to anyone who is expert in the medical devices, actually.
So we can go on to the next question. We briefly touched further already on hallucinations and fabrications also, but there is a question to explain further how hallucinations and fabrications are a risk.
Okay, I think I will briefly answer it, and then I'll pass it on to Dr. Abdullah to actually elaborate it on it. So if I understand how we could reduce the hallucinations, that's what I'm trying to answer here. Basically, see, we've also developed our in-house AI for the past 1.5 years. And then the more data from the regional perspective that we have, and we are still annotating a lot of data points from different databases that are more specific towards the region. Especially I'm talking about the Asia Pacific region, which I'm working in. So that's one thing. Although there are open source models, or the models which are coming up from Claude and OpenAI and everything, the trusting on a single model, especially to give you better answers, is quite difficult. So I think it's more important that we look into a lot of private databases, talk with companies who have access to these databases, annotate those databases, make them into a proper vector databases, and then actually that would in future could reduce the hallucinations in general. That's actually from a technical perspective, but Dr. Abdullah can actually answer this from a functional side on how we can work on the hallucination space.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Aditya. What is the difference here between the hallucination and fabrications? So basically, the hallucination means that AI can give an answer that sounds correct, but it's actually wrong or not supported by fact. However, fabrications means that AI invents something that does not exist, such as a fake reference, fake policy, fake study, fake number, or maybe fake code. So in a simple word, to make it simple here, so hallucination equal to AI that makes a mistake but presented as a confident answer. However, fabrications that equal to AI makes something up. And maybe here I can give like a simple an example. For example, if I share with the AI something like a clinical study. So I ask him simple question, please summarize the result of the clinical study, for example. I believe the AI will answer that maybe, for example, this study showed 45% improvement in a patient recovery, and the author concluded that the treatment is safe for all age group, for example. So what is the wrong here exactly? If we do from the hallucination part, that the AI give you a misunderstood the study itself. So the real improvement was not only was 15% maybe or 15%, not 45%. So there is a misunderstood of the study itself. However, on the other side, the fabrication that the AI may invent, okay, a conclusion that the author or the body of the clinical study never wrote, such as this study is, for example, safe for all age group, okay, but maybe this study particularly only included the adult patients, not within the pediatric patient. So yeah, this is in general the most difference between hallucination and fabrication and the risk, and I share one example.
Thank you very much. And I think we can take the next one.
Sure. Another question is asking, what should be expected from the regulator if they use AI in evaluating the RA submitted information, such as product dossiers, variations, CAPAs, or related licensing information, to ensure that the regulatory affairs can effectively understand and trust the decision or outcome?
So they're asking what to do if the regulators are already using AI. Okay. Okay, I'm just trying to check the question if it's in the. So which one is
It's
that?
a human. It's by Mario. Yeah, it's by Mario. So regulator.
Understood. If they use AI in evaluating RA regulators, product dot here to ensure RA can be effectively understand the trust the decision or outcome.
I can take part of it, and maybe Aditya, you can.
I think Dr. Neveen,
so
you can.
one of the important things we make sure as an organization or the regulator, both of us first, we need to make sure that it's not a public AI tool, so we cannot put confidential data or a dossier parts in a public. So some organizations or companies or even health authority, they start to develop their own AI tool internally, not on public. This is number one. Number two, we make sure that we feed them with the correct and the latest information. So, for example, as an organization, we give them our SOP. So for the regulator, they can give the policy and they can give the guidelines also. So we give them data and we do the correct prompt, and then it will give some information, and we will consider it as a first draft. Regulator will consider it as a summarizing and draft, and then the personal expertise need to validate. And again, they need to ask about the cutoff, the knowledge cutoff date, because as we said, this jurisdictional nuance, the AI tool usually take the reference as the most trained language learning. So they can take FDA and EU as the reference in the assessment. So you need to say in the prompt, not in the prompt, sorry, in the profile, you are an assessor or a regulator from this country, from GCC country, from other Africa countries, from whatever countries, you are an assessor from here. So you direct the AI not to consider you as EU or FDA because this is the default, for example, because it is mostly used there. So the prompt should be correct. The profile need to be correct. We need to give him or feed him with the latest thing and validate the outcome. We cannot take the AI as a decision taking for us. It's just supporting, summarizing, helping, comparing, and that's it.
Yeah,
And
I think
if you need
one other point I would like to add in general, it's not about what kind of data tools that regulatory authorities have an access to, because I think from FDA or what are the global, all the regulatory bodies, they have access to a completely different set of databases, proprietary databases, and their evaluation methods are completely not disclosed out. So even they use AI tools, they would never disclose us. Even though they use their own databases, they're never going to disclose what kind of information they usually have and then how you are evaluated. They only come back to us like asking us a question to provide us more data. But I think with from even the GCC board authorities have very good access to the regulatory bodies in FDA and EU space as well. That's the reason why I think they are looking at it. I'm 200% sure that they would never disclose which AI tool they would be using in their evaluation methods, because that would really make sure that everyone starts using that AI tool for their submissions as well. So I think that's quite not legal to actually disclose what kind of AI tools they would be using, but I'm sure the regulatory bodies have a very strong backing of data that's been submitted to them across all these years.
Are we okay to move on to another question?
Yes, Anna, please.
Husna Salim has asked, as regulatory decision-making becomes more automated and data-driven throughout the GCC, how do you see the core competencies of regulatory compliance officers evolving? Are there specific data or tech skills that they should be mastering right now to best support health authorities like MOHAP or SFDA?
I think Dr. Rasha could actually give insights on this.
I would jump and then leave it to Rasha, but I guess the technical and specific data skills they need to master is prompt engineering. It's not like the engineering thing, but the prompt. If you write the correct prompt and you understand exactly what you need from this tool, then you get the good, so you get the best answer. But if you don't know what you want to do and you just give information and then wait for the output, you will never have a correct. So the skill everybody needs to learn is the prompt, and to also to capture the error and re-educate the tool. So you need to capture the lesson learned and tell them, if you open a project, for example, for a dossier submission, so you continuously feed this project. So you said, I have this question to the authority and this was the answer. And then, because if there is a repeated pattern of questions, this skill need to be learned to the AI tool. So next time this can be avoided, or he can tell you, okay, watch this for the second submission, for example.
Completely agree, Neveen. Yeah, thank you so much. This is really a very good point, because if we did not try to improve it every time and put all the data that you have provided to the health authority, there will not be an improvement in both sectors, either government or the industry. And we said a very important point at the beginning of the presentation, which is the communication between the regulators and the industry to take it to the next level. All AI programs and either way, it has to be communicated in both sectors and to have harmonization and alignment to get the best result. And this will not come from the first version. Sometimes it will take different version, number one, number two. Sometimes even the health authority are updating the version for the AI to match the improvement happening worldwide.
Yes. Yeah.
Another question we've had is, given that regulatory pharmacovigilance and quality teams can use completely different softwares, what would you advise would be the first step to connecting these workflows and avoid causing data confusion?
Okay, I think I think Dr. Rasha and Dr. Abdullah can definitely answer this, but we do have a software which is actually interconnected, all these four areas exactly, including we have recently, we used to have individual softwares, but we actually clubbed into a single suite of software to make sure that we are addressing this issue. But I'm sure Dr. Rasha or Dr. Abdullah might be using a different multiple softwares in terms of getting the safety, quality, and labeling data from here and there. I think they could actually answer from their perspective.
Well, specifically in GCC, there is nothing specific that we can say there is a specific one, but maybe I feel Saudi FDA, they do have a specific software. Abdullah?
Actually, yeah, Aditya.
Now, basically, they're asking if we have all multiple regulatory, safety, quality, and different softwares for each and every part. So, what is the workflow? That what is the main entry point that you would be looking at all these softwares to actually that's I think that's what he was looking to.
Yeah. Maybe I can answer this. So, as a first step is to agree on common data definitions. Okay. So before connecting to different teams or different systems, the teams should align on very important points here. So the first one, what each data what each data field means, and which system is the source of truth, as well as how the product names, codes, maybe dates, and the case ID are written, and who owns and update each type of data. So, as a in a simple terms, first agree on a common data language before connecting the system together.
Okay, I mean, understood. And I think I think that answers basically agreeing to a common data point and a data structure before we actually
Exactly.
teams.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
So time-wise, I would say that we have time for one more question. Our dear panelists, has there been anything specifically in the chat box you would like to answer that you've seen? Or are you happy for me to continue choosing a question?
Okay. Yeah, basically, also there is one question which I've always been looking at, usually from the industry, from the how do we choose uh, an AI? This is what kind of AI will be used. That's very difficult question to answer.
Yes.
It's what kind of AI will be used? Is it like OpenAI, Gemini, Cloud? There are like tons and tons of new AI, open AI models and everything. How do you pick an AI tool for your work is one of the difficult questions to answer at this stage. But yeah, I would also be interested in knowing from you about how do you pick an AI tool?
Actually, we have a description. Usually I check the description because I know that every tool is professional in one thing.
Yeah.
So if I need a data analysis, so I go, for example, if I have images or so some tools can be better, and it comes by experience and reading the description. So sometimes I use one and it's not very comfortable for me. It's not giving good examples, so I have a preference for that. However, we stick to our organizational, not fully open source AI tool. So every organization have the approved and validated AI tool. And again, we have a policy in the organization which level of information we can use. We can go to the internal information only. We can share confidential or even to the secret, according to the policy of the organization. So we use the indoor and in-house, and I guess the regulators or the authorities will have their own approved AI also. So we use ours, and in our local AI tool, we have different, we have Claude, and we have different version according to the, is it a data or image or comparison or language? So every tool has specificities.
Understood. Thank you. I think basically because most of the companies are now looking for on-premise AI installations, not connected to the cloud. I think a lot has been changing because especially when cloud has installed their Anthropic versions into on-premise installations they have done. I think Microsoft is also, because most of the pharma industry uses Microsoft as their communication tools. So that's the Copilot has been one of the areas that most of the pharmaceutical companies, but mostly these are all on-premise installations because data privacy and the security of the data, transformation of data into a bigger organizations is quite difficult to handle, especially with pharma industry with the patented data and all. So I think, and I think that kind of answers the questions. Most of it we will try to consolidate all these questions that we have and reply to them separately on or directly to them. Because of the time constraint, and then it was an amazing discussion. We kind of covered a lot of different points at a superficial level, but we could actually discuss each and every point at a deeper extent, and then it could take a lot of time as well, but it very well covered, well balanced, 3x3 pillar strategy to the human in the loop, SOPs. There's so many topics that we have covered. I'm sure a lot of people might have learned something out of it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you very much for the discussion. And moreover, the conversation should follow because everybody is learning while we are doing the regulations at the same time. So I guess thank you very much for this opportunity for discussing and for the next discussions.
Yeah, I echo Dr. Neveen. Thank you so much. This is very, very hot topic these days in the RA area. So yeah, thank you so much.
A huge thank you to Dr. Neveen, Dr. Abdullah, and Dr. Rasha for such practical discussion. I hope everyone has enjoyed the scene that has been set. And of course, thank you, Aditya, for setting the stage so well with the backgrounds of the presentation. We appreciate all of you for joining us, and we hope that today's discussion brought you some real actionable insight that you can take into your professional life. And we look forward to continuing this conversation in our upcoming initiative. Thank you so much.